I want to take this moment to welcome all who are here. This is bringing the Jewish community together and our friends, allies, and neighbors as well. Thank you. I am overwhelmed with the response for this evening. And I want to just recognize that our Jewish community is very diverse. And you might not see this evening as spectacular, but for us in the Jewish community, this evening is one of unity like we have never seen before. We are here as Jews of different movements. We are here of Jews of different observances of Judaism under the one roof, many doorways into Judaism. We are a community. 20% of us are Jews of color. We are a community where many of us come from different cultures, different customs, different countries of origin. Judaism is what binds us together, but there is such diversity. We have come together this evening in unity, under the banner of no hate, no fear. I feel the energy, and I am so grateful to be gathered tonight and have such a wonderful, wonderful community gathered today. We are joining other communities across the nation who are also gathering at this time. In the uptick of anti-Semitism, our nation must stand together. And of course, solidarity is our best security. We join with all of you, and we thank a generous anonymous donor who has made this evening possible as well. Our community is diverse, but anti-Semitism, like all hatred, doesn't see diversity. It stereotypes, and it exists on a singular message of hate. Anti-Semitism is as old as the book of Exodus. Anti-Semitism is something that attacks the Jewish community but creates terror in every community. And so we are here to counteract not only anti-Semitism but all hate. Tonight, we are rejecting that message of hate. We are, of course, making sure that we reach out to one another. Many people ask me, why now? Why has there been such an increase of anti-Semitism now? Of course, people are surprised by the swell of violence against the Jewish community. In times of transformation and transformative change, uncertainty for the future, we are often targeted as a community first, and we must fight against that. We must go forward together, and of course, creating a tomorrow that binds us together, not divides us, in hope for the common good. I've been asked a lot, what can we do? Well, tonight is the answer. Coming together and being together is what you can do. And you will hear many calls of action tonight from the myriad of people who are speaking. And whatever speaks to you, we ask you to act, to not only have conversation, but to do something. That's what makes Minnesotans great. That's what makes Minnesota the place we love. And so we are going to continue at the beginning of this evening with a song about bringing all of us together. It is in Hebrew and in English, and join your voices. La 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 works in any way.
How good it is,
how good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is to gather on this day.
how good it is,
How good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be
together on this day. Inei matov umanai shevet achim gam yachad. Inei matov umanai shevet achim gam yachad.
Shalom
Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem.
How good it is,
how good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be
together on this day.
How good it is,
How good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be
together on this day. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad.
What do I desire for my country? How do I envision the land I love? Let it be a land where knowledge is free, where the mind is without fear, and all people hold their heads high, where the words come out from the depths of truth.
Where the world has not been broken up into fragments, where tireless striving stretches its arms toward unity and wholeness, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way, where the mind is led forward into ever-widening thought and action, into the heaven of freedom, let my country awake.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ted, and the federations of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I carry this medallion with me. It was given to me by the former chief chaplain, head chaplain of the Minnesota National Guard, John Morris. And on it is inscribed, "I will be strong and courageous. I will not be terrified or discouraged, for God is with me wherever I go." Joshua 1:9. A couple special welcomes right at the outset. Consul General Ariel Deloya of Canada is with us tonight. Thank you, Consul General. And our friends from the ADL Midwest, David Goldenberg and Matt Feldman. So welcome. There are so many with us tonight in this journey from whom we draw strength and courage and with whom we partner. Law enforcement, first responders, the Minnesota National Guard, Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, First Lady Gwen Walz, Speaker Hortman, Leader Gazelka, members of Congress and their staff, so many with us who are doing so much for the security of our community. And keep in mind, we have wonderful volunteers, security community volunteers working at practically every synagogue, school, and agency. Our own JCRC team working 24/7, 365 behind the scenes for our community security. We thank the donors and the foundations who invest in community security. And a special thank you for the precious resources that we receive from the state and federal government. So let us all contribute to the effort, and that's our call to action. Communicate, educate, advocate, collaborate. For communicate, report and document incidents of hate. For educate, participate in learning experiences about anti-Semitism and racism. For advocate, for increased resources for community security and improved hate crimes legislation. And collaborate. We will continue sharing our experience and relationships to strengthen the security of all communities at all times. So on behalf of the JCRC and our board chair, Marty Chester, I want to finish with a quote from Reverend Eric Manning, who's the pastor at Mother Emanuel AME, Charleston, South Carolina. And he says, "God is with us in the midst of our trials. It's not going to be easy, but God's peace is going to be right there. So let us continue to go from strength to strength, and I know that love will continue to conquer hate, and we will all do it together." Thank you very much.
I stand before my Jewish family members as your son, as your brother, as your ally, and as your partner. There is not one law that has been created that is more powerful than that of love. For you see, solidarity and the love that we show to our neighbors is absolutely the greatest thing that we can do. But we must not be complicit in our silence. We cannot be complicit in our silence. My oath to office, but more importantly, my promise to humanity requires that I stand up, that I speak out, and that I support my neighbors whenever hate and fear raise its very ugly and destructive head. For the space that I occupy, I can never allow hate and fear to settle. I come today to tell you that peace officers here in Minneapolis and across our great state, we stand by our Jewish community members. I'm also very proud to be joined in the audience here today as my good partner, Sheriff Hutchinson from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. Now, while we may have certainly seen the rise in anti-Semitism here locally and across our country, I'm also very proud that we have a leader in Governor Walz who is making sure that all law enforcement chiefs and sheriffs across our state are supported, and so that we are doing the best we can to prevent these very destructive acts. And again, I come here today to tell you that the public safety, our community, will move heaven and earth to ensure that our Jewish family members are protected. You do not walk alone. You do not stand alone. We walk with you, and we stand by you. Thank you very much.
Esteemed Governor, Lieutenant Governor, community leaders, community members, and friends, good evening. There is a basic tenet of Jewish faith that nothing, absolutely nothing, happens by coincidence. In Yiddish, we call it bashert. You see, friends, there's a wake-up call here. But instead of getting out of bed and answering the phone, we tend to pull the cord out of the wall and turn over and try to escape the message. What is the message? So this fellow goes up to the rooftop of his 10-story building to catch some fresh air after a long, hard day at work. The door closes behind him, and he finds himself stuck on the roof with no way down. He yells down, but no one is to hear him. He's 10 stories high. Desperate, he takes a quarter out of his pocket, waits for someone to walk by the building, and tosses it down. The fellow bends down, picks it up, and continues walking. Same thing happens to all the rest of his coins in his pocket. Then he tries floating bills down. You can imagine his frustration, seeing all the people overjoyed at their new find. But no one looks up. Frantic, he has no idea the next time someone plans to come to the top of the roof. So he looks around, sees a stone, and chucks it over. A fellow sees it right away and yells up, "Who threw that?" "I'm up here," he yells, and the man is finally saved.
You see, we all have so much to learn about our glorious past. We don't zoom out enough and think about all of the miracles that have sustained our people. We take for granted the opportunities that we have, and there are so many. Look around this room. We have a community. We have support. We have the freedom to practice how we wish. Yet at times, we don't bother looking up. But when someone throws a rock in our direction, when we are challenged, when someone makes us uncomfortable, only then do we look up and yell, "How dare you?" Don't wait for the rocks to fall to remember to look up and think about your heritage and your people. But talk is just talk. Deeds really speak the loudest. So here is my suggestion. Don't turn over and go back to bed. Don't just be Jews, be proud Jews. If you do not have a mezuzah on your front door, consider getting one and hang it proudly. If you already have one and it hasn't been checked in a few years, send it to a scribe to be sure that it's still kosher. If you are not sure where to get one, speak to your clergy. No hate, no fear must be more than just a slogan. We fight anti-Semitism by being proud Semites. I will end with a quote from Barry Weiss, editor of the New York Times, who spoke at the rally in New York on Sunday. The Jewish people were not put on earth to be anti-Semites. We were put on earth to be Jews.
Rabbi Joshua Bornstein was known as JB in the community, was not able to be here, and he wanted to send a message. So we're taking a moment to hear his message via video.
My name is Rabbi Joshua Bornstein. I'm the Executive Director of Torah Academy and greatly appreciate everyone coming tonight to express their concern about anti-Semitism and the rise of it, and to see what we can do to improve that. Special thank you to all of our elected officials who are here tonight, especially the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Senate Majority Leader who have come to speak. First, to express an appreciation that we all have to this country for being the greatest place the Jews have ever had, to come as guests and be able to live our lives safely, observe the way we want, and it's never happened before in history. And even if we just look at the last 14 months, and all of what we're concerned about, it's still the greatest that we've ever had in our history. And we have to realize that and recognize that, and that's why we're so concerned, because we know what America strives to be, what it's always been, and we want to make sure it remains that way. On top of that, I request on behalf of ourselves that all of our elected officials do what you can to help our community, make sure our schools are safe. Many states are getting in front of this quickly, making sure schools are safe, making sure houses of worship are safe. And on a state level, whatever we can do to focus on that is greatly important and greatly appreciated. We all realize how scary it is when we hear the stories that happen. And I think something that we always note is how close the Jewish world is and how connected it all is. And anyone sitting here knows that we're never more than 1 or 2 degrees separated from any event that happens almost in the world. There's an attack in Muncie, New York. I got married a mile from where that attack was. I've spent many holidays right in that area. There's an attack in Jersey City. I grew up in St. Louis Park. My surrogate Bubby, who lived next door, I remember her telling me she was from Jersey City. I'd never heard of it, but she grew up in Jersey City. So these things hit home on an emotional level really, really quickly. And therefore, it gets our concern up, our worry up, and we look to our leadership to help with that. I would like, if I can, just to offer a thought that maybe something we can all do to make ourselves stronger. We learn in this week's Parsha, that the Torah portion, that the sons of Jacob, before he died, all expressed to him their unity together and to God by saying the first verse of Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, God is one. That is the rallying cry of the Jewish people. That is the words that we have on our mezuzah that protects us in our house. And those are the words that we express every day to affirm our faith to God, who is our ultimate protector, and to affirm our unity together of purpose as a Jewish people. If you say the Shema every day, I ask that you think about it a little more, what you're saying. Think about all the people that are in pain and all the concern that's out there and the unity we can have. And if you don't say it every day, consider adding that to your daily routine. 10 seconds it'll take you. And reaffirm your faith, reaffirm your connection to all the Jews together, and together we can accomplish far more than we can as individuals. Thank you.
So we are going to say a prayer of healing for all of us in the wake of violence, for those who are struggling in the reality of what they encountered. And so together we join our voices in a prayer of healing.
African Americans and Jews have much in common. We share a love of music, fine dining, share a love of family and of our elders. We also share a history of traumatic events, the Holocaust, the transatlantic slave trade, more recently, attacks on our religious institutions, whether they be in Muncie, New York, Tree of Life, or the 16th Street Baptist Church, or Mother Emanuel AME. We have a lot in common, but we've come a long way together, and I'm here tonight to remind us that we have far more in common than we are different. I'm here to... There are some who would isolate the fact that the perpetrator of the horrific stabbing in Muncie, New York was an African-American man, and they would take that single point and lift it up and try to use it as a cleave to divide us further. But I say to you tonight, that's a distraction. The truth is that whoever that individual was, misguided, hateful, he was also a victim as well. And while I make no excuses for what he did, I want you to understand that mental illness is a manifestation of a racist and troubling system of white supremacy. Some would argue that to be African American and not mentally ill is an oxymoron because of this troubling system. And so I want you to remember what we have in common. I want you to remember tonight that we stand together and not apart, and that we are stronger together. And I want you to remember that you do not fight this battle alone, that the fear that some would have and argue that would divide us is nothing more than a means and a platform for us to hold hands, reach across aisles of difference, and restore and reignite our history of cooperation together. So my call to action tonight is a pushback against your theme. I actually want to invite you to hate. I want you to hate indifference, and I want you to hate violence, and I want you to hate ignorance. And I want you to fear apathy and xenophobia and cynicism. These are things that are within your grasp to do. And while I am couching them in the negative, in the positive, I want you to get out and live your lives fully and freely and embracing each other with love and compassion. So allow me to end with my preacher's hat on and leave you with a benediction from the prophet Isaiah, who said, "My people shall live in peaceful homes, in secure dwelling places, and in undisturbed places of rest." And my benediction, my wish, my prayer for you tonight is that you shall have peace, that you will know security, and that you will have a long, restful night of sleep. Thank you.
We come together this evening as friends and colleagues from the Minnesota Rabbinical Association, a diverse body with over 40 rabbis from across the state of Minnesota. Our organization represents the wide spectrum of engagement in modern Jewish life, as well as a wide spectrum of belief, practice, and tradition. This evening, we stand side by side in solidarity with those who have been targeted because they are Jewish, and we also stand together in deep gratitude to all those who are here to support our Jewish community. To stand together as Jews in the face of anti-Semitism is to stand not only for the survival of the Jewish people, but for the meaning, purpose, and value that being Jewish adds to our lives and to the world. We read early on in Torah, in the foundational text of the Jewish people, a warning about losing track of the purpose of our actions and way of being in this world. In the story commonly referred to as the Tower of Babel, God looks down at a tower the people were building toward the sky and decides in that moment to confound the people's language and scatter them across the earth. In trying to determine the cause of this punishment, many commentators look back to the verse that sets the scene for God's actions. Vayomru hava nivla lanu ir umigdal v'rosho b'shamayim v'na'aseh lanu shem pen nafutz al panei chol haaretz. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, a tower with its top to the sky, to make a name for ourselves. Else we be scattered all over the world." According to the commentary, the people were building for the sake of building, to make a name for themselves, but for no greater purpose or value. And it was precisely this sin that God sought to confound, rearrange, and redirect. Building for the sake of building is not enough. Survival for the sake of survival is not enough. There are so many ways the Jewish community has come to understand the deeper purpose or meaning behind what it means to be in relationship with God, to learn, do, and be in community. For me, it's about the pursuit of making the world a better place through the lens of Jewish tradition, to connect with others through joy, pain, learning, and action toward a more just society for all people.
As Rabbi Kribbings remarked, we hold many ways of understanding our deeper purpose and what it means to be in relationship with the Almighty and one another. And we represent that beautiful diversity of traditions and perspectives, and we must actively seek paths to support one another, not only through tragedy, but to learn from one another and to respect one another in better times as well. I submit the example tonight of the Hasidim on Forshey Road in Monsey, New York. Mere hours after the Hanukkah attack, a group gathered in the shul adjacent to the home where it had occurred. It was a shul, a house of worship that looks quite a bit different from our present setting, and probably rather different than many of the synagogues, temples, and shuls that many of us might attend. And they gathered on that night, hours after the horrors next door. And they gathered for a tish, to learn, to appreciate, to be in community, and to sing songs of salvation, heartfelt prayers of gratitude. Chaste Hashem ki lo tamu, ki lo chalu rachamav. The righteousness of the Almighty, they sang, has not ceased, nor is there an end to Hashem's mercies. You can actually watch it on YouTube if you're curious. Personally, the sight of these survivors regrouping and continuing to do what we have always done is breathtaking and inspiring. Indeed, the name of that community, Netzach Yisrael, speaks to our capacity to overcome challenge after challenge after challenge. 30 years ago, that same shul with that same Rebbe burned to the ground on the eve of Simchat Torah, a night of dancing and celebrating the Torah and our heritage. It burned to the ground hours before Simchat Torah. And what did they do? With the help of a neighboring community, they ushered in the festival and they danced. The focus, the fortitude required to pick back up and to sing and dance amidst the challenge, upholding our traditions, celebrating our heritage, that is the energy that I pray binds us together tonight. Chaste Hashem ki lo tamu, ki lo chalu rachamav.
It is a source of strength, a source of great hope to be here with friends from across all streams of Judaism and with community partners from all faith traditions. But I also wish I was not here with you. You see, I had to change a long-standing commitment at Adath Yeshurun. Every Tuesday night, I teach the nearly 30 students in Adath's 10th grade confirmation program. Our confirmation program is bursting at the seams with students who come every week to build relationships over dinner, to take part in our daily evening minyan, and then to wrestle with the issues of our time. In class, we try to link ancient texts with contemporary questions, surfacing all the excitements and challenges of being a Jewish teenager today. Tonight, many of my students are here in the sanctuary. Our space had to change, but the teaching is still the same, and it is enriched by each one of you here. By coming together, we commit to, as Rabbi Crimmings just said, the meaning, purpose, and value that being Jewish adds to our lives and to the world. Tonight, I pray we make a commitment to our children about such meaning, purpose, and value, much like Jacob makes a commitment in our Torah reading this week. He might otherwise feel powerless on his deathbed in Egypt, but in such a moment of feeling loss, Jacob chooses to bless his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh. It is the practice continued today as children traditionally receive blessings from their parents at the Shabbat dinner table. So to each one of us, in the face of the curse of anti-Semitism, can choose to put forward the blessings that are in our hands, our hearts, and our minds to control. Tonight, let us recommit to living Jewish lives of meaning, purpose, and value that capture the spirit of Netzach Yisrael, of overcoming challenge after challenge, as my colleague Rabbi Davis just captured. Perhaps to find moments in our over-programmed lives to pause during the day and from humility offer gratitude. To incorporate a Shabbat practice that interrupts our busy routines, perhaps where our phones control us instead of we them. To decide to study Hebrew or spend time engaged with Israel. To ask how, when another group is hurting, we might be better allies. To extend our hands to prepare a meal, or our eyes to see suffering in the name of chesed, of loving kindness. In so doing, we not only fight the scourge of anti-Semitism, but more important, we decide if we will take the time to be Jewish. Like Joseph blessing his grandsons, I pray that in facing moments of crisis and uncertainty today, each of us will choose to put forward blessings through our actions. For all the generations that are yet to be, they are counting on our commitments, our blessings tonight. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the interfaith clergy who are here to come forward, people who are representing their religious communities to come forward and lead us in a prayer. Yeah. Everybody who's here should come up.
The expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. For one human community, one common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, for high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, for all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, for human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. We pray that we may not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Amen.
So much clergy, I'll watch my language. Hello, thank you for having me. I want to start by saying that if there is anyone here who's felt anxious in the current moment about coming to a public Jewish event, that I see you. And thank you for coming anyway. As Jews in Minnesota, there are times when we may feel invisible among our neighbors and times when we may feel too visible for our comfort. That's real. A few weeks ago, I found out I was going to be honored on a list of interesting Jews, and while I was absolutely ecstatic to have Minnesota represented on this list of mostly New York and DC names, I hesitated. Does this feel like a safe time to be an even more public Jew? And I imagine that some of you here have been having thoughts like that, so I want to bring you some hope and offer you a challenge. Hope first. I want to tell you what I did earlier this afternoon. I trained a room full of organizers who are all working with farmers in greater Minnesota, and I taught them about anti-Semitism because they asked me to. They identified a gap in their racial justice analysis, a missing piece of the way that they think about discrimination, and they asked for help putting a name to an undercurrent that they've felt and a hate that they have sensed.
They invited me in, and I gave them a historical and modern analysis of anti-Semitism, and their response was, "We want more." They want to do more. In 1985, farmers from around the state came together with Jews right here in Temple, Israel, to fight anti-Semitism. And in 2020, the echoes of that bond still exist. Rural Minnesotans, some who mostly don't even live in communities with Jews, want to do more to be allies to us, to stand with us. And I'm not surprised, but I'm heartened, and I'm hopeful, and I hope that you can share a piece of that with me tonight. And now, we're Jews, a challenge. Solidarity, we talk about solidarity, and I truly believe that solidarity is how we get through hard times. Solidarity was when our Muslim and Christian allies and friends showed up after the shooting in Pittsburgh to mourn with us, and when they offered to walk with us to shul to make us feel safe. And solidarity is when the true rabbis travel to Florida to stand with the Immokalee tomato workers who are experiencing slave labor conditions. But solidarity isn't a buzzword, and it isn't just about showing up for things when things are bad. It's also about being vulnerable enough to ask for that support when we need it, and being in the kinds of relationships that allow us to be comfortable being vulnerable. It also means sometimes showing up when things are okay. It's not just a rally. Sometimes it's a meal. Maybe it's a text message. It's a relationship. People who target us want us to be afraid and to close ourselves off, and we only fight that with openness. So I leave you with hope and a challenge and a promise that I will stand with you, my community. Thank you.
Good evening. Just had a few moments to think about what I wanted to say, and I was thinking about your history and some of the things that have happened throughout the Jewish history. That for centuries upon centuries, there's been moments of great anti-Semitism. And yet, it wasn't a surprise to God. And he always provided a standard. He always raised up somebody that would stand in the gap, whether it was Moses or Esther or somebody like Schindler or presidents or other leaders that said this is wrong. And today, I want to be one of those leaders that says this is wrong, and I'm going to stand with you. And I want to be vulnerable as a follower of Jesus, that I'm deeply grieved that Christianity has been used at times over the centuries to persecute you. I am deeply grieved, and I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive those people, because that is not the way of a follower of Jesus, and please forgive us for that. The last thing I want to say is something I see among the Jewish people. It's a precious beauty. It is something that God made and created, and I see you as a seed that have been planted in many cultures, and you were a blessing, and you are a blessing. Your culture, your history, your traditions have all been a blessing to the earth, and a blessing to America, and a blessing to Minnesota. And I just want to say God bless you back.
So on New Year's Day, I found myself at a New Year's party with the governor and first lady. And they asked me, what can we do for the Jewish community? Governor and first lady, This is what we did for you to come. That seed created this evening, so thank you. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for your friendship and your deep sense of amazing connection to our community. And so we begin first with the Lieutenant Governor and then Governor Walz. So please, Peg.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. Yes. I'm really honored and humbled to be here. And I want to say thank you for everyone who is here, especially because it can be hard, it can be difficult, and as Karen mentioned, it can be scary to come together in troubled times. And especially even this evening, as some of you have heard the news and have turned on the news, we live in troubling times. But I want you to know that we stand with you, with the Jewish community in the state of Minnesota, across the country, and around the world, as partners in justice, in ensuring that the Jewish community is seen and heard and valued. I see, as someone who comes from the Native community, my Ingan and Dodame, my clan is the Wolf Clan. And the role of our clan is to ensure that we're not leaving anyone behind. I take that role very seriously. And it is one of the reasons why I am here with all of you tonight. As an Ojibwe woman, as an Anishinaabe Kwe, as someone who comes from a community that is deeply familiar with genocide, with erasure, from a community that is very familiar with the impact of ignorance of who we are, that I feel that in my bones. And I feel it in my heart that we are in solidarity together. And I want to say it's not too long ago that the Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978, 1 year before I was born, was passed, which allowed us to bring our religion, our spiritual practices into the public that had been underground for generations. Our children had to hide who they were, what they believed. It was stolen from them. And we are still feeling the impact of that every single day. I will do everything I can. The governor will do everything he can to stand in solidarity to say, what has happened to our children will not happen to your children. That our Jewish community that our young people, that our 10th graders who are here tonight, that they can be proud of who they are, and that their identity is something to be celebrated and not to be hidden. So while I am saddened that we have to gather together tonight to mourn, I am hopeful that we are gathering together tonight to say, we walk together. We stand in solidarity together. My daughter Siobhan is going to be 7 in 2 weeks. So she is at the age where she asks a lot of questions about God, about mortality, about who we are, about war. And most recently, we had a conversation about different faith traditions and what we believe as Catholics, but also what we believe as Ojibwe people. And I said, my girl, the core of God is the sun, and what I have been taught is the rays of the sun are different ways to get to him. And so I bring that spirit into this space tonight. What I teach my daughter and what we talk about in our family is that there are different pathways to God, but that we are all in community together. And that my future, our future as Minnesota, is linked deeply together with the Jewish community. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you have done. Thank you for the prayers that you have prayed. But more importantly, Chimigwich, thank you for all of the work that we will do in solidarity together to work for peace. Thank you.
I am going to take a moment before the governor comes to the microphone to ask all the elected officials and those representing elected officials to please rise so we can thank you for being present. And now, the governor.
Good evening, Rabbi Zimmerman. Thank you, and thank you to Temple Israel for always opening this beautiful place of sanctuary, for being here at times of celebration and times of tragedy to gather community, because it always comes back to community. I think each of you in the room tonight can feel what's right about a shared humanity, can feel what's right about decency and compassion and solidarity, and you have been there. I feel personally grateful that over the past few years, the most important moments in my life seem to be intersecting with you and the work that you're doing. And I hope that speaks to a common purpose and a common good. To Steve Hunnings and JCRC, the folks who are here, the incredible work you've done for so long to educate our community, to be there as a voice, to always be at the forefront, to make sure that when anti-Semitism rears its ugly head, as it inevitably does, you are there at the beginning to call it what it is, to look for a plan of action and security, and to think about educating. And Steve, I want to thank you for being a friend and a mentor and a leader. To Karn Maratz, thank you. To Karn Maratz and Jewish Community Action, you can hear it in Karn's words, a wisdom far beyond your ages, a sense of humility and humor and the shared humanity that we come for, and I appreciate the work that you do collectively. Chief, thank you. You provide words of comfort to this community. You provide comfort to all of us, to you and your officers who are out there putting themselves on the line to ensure our security. We are grateful and thank you. Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, I want to thank you again, always being a voice of justice. We talk about being partners in justice together. I'm always honored with your words and honored with your perspective that you bring us. Thank you. And to the elected representatives who are here, thank you. As anti-Semitism can span the political spectrum, decency and civility can also span the political spectrum. And on behalf of Gwen and I, to each of you who took time to be here tonight, my message to you is one that I want to leave no doubts about. As the honor and the privilege and the responsibility of being governor of Minnesota, my first responsibility in this job is the safety and security of all Minnesotans. You have my pledge and the commitment that of the authority that I have and the resources of the entire state of Minnesota will be brought to bear that every single one of you can feel safe in your communities, safe in your schools, safe in your worship, and safe in your lives. That is a commitment that we make. And as we think about things that we can do together, from safety and providing the resources necessary to provide that, and then thinking further ahead, I want to thank Representative Hornstein, Senator Latz. I know you're thinking about ways that we strengthen our hate crimes laws to make sure that at any place this rises up, that there will be swift and severe punishments for it. I am grateful for that, and I know that this is something that binds us all together, this common thread. And I also want to think about, for all of you, and I want to echo the words that I heard earlier, and thinking about this community of never has been, is not, and never will be defined by anti-Semitism. You will be defined by the contributions to human culture across the spectrum of endeavors. You will be defined by a moral and ethical tradition that is the best that humanity has to offer and shapes the decisions that we make, from democracy to the way we deal with one another. That is the legacy of this community. That's what we're here to celebrate, and that's what we're here to stand up against when you hear the no fear and no hate, that we cannot allow that message to drive the way we respond. So we will provide security. We will do what's necessary to strengthen our laws to make sure that doesn't happen. But you can feel it in this room, that the capacity to have a shared humanity, to love, is there. That solidarity of our interfaith community that's there, the vast majority of Minnesotans who stand in absolute solidarity with you, that we know as anti-Semitism rises, as hate rises, as a chaotic world rises, there's things that we can do, practical things on security, practical things on laws, and then we can start thinking about our own behaviors, how we talk to one another, how we conduct ourselves. And I ask for those in elected office, those in appointed office, and those who organically are in leadership to understand the impression that has. As we're sitting here right now, my wife was showing me the text from our 13-year-old that's home tonight. And he's texting, "I'm afraid of war. I'm afraid of war." Our children are watching. They're watching all the time. And in lies the secret, through education. It's what I spent a lifetime doing. I had the privilege of being a Balfour Fellow to the Holocaust Museum before it opened up. And the idea of not teaching genocide and the Holocaust in a historical vacuum, so our children did not understand the signs that led to it, or the casual anti-Semitic tropes that are brushed off as, oh, that's just the way things go. No, that's not just the way things go. These are learned behaviors that lead to a chain of events that can be prevented. So I would call on all of us, and I would call on our legislators to think about this, strengthening the education in our schools to understand where hate comes from. Make sure they understand that these are preventable. Make sure there are distant early warnings that we can put in that stop it before we get to the point of a Pittsburgh or what happened in New York City, or worse yet. That's our responsibility. And it's not simply to be pushed aside. And as all of you know in this, hate raises in many ways, but anti-Semitism is a very specific and ancient hate that knows the path where it leads to. And so, as governor of Minnesota, I would ask all of us to understand that this state has an incredible opportunity to model. We have a credible opportunity to model collective work together. And I can tell all of you, it's how we approach things. Just this morning, Leader Gazelka gathered with Speaker Hortman and myself to talk about how do we do a legislative session that's in the best interest of Minnesotans, finding common compromise to make things better. How do we do that? Everything we do can lead us to that path and model for those children who are here that there's a decency and a common humanity that prevails, that we will not let this stand, that we will not allow differences, whether they be religious, economic, racial, or political, to divide us from this common idea that each person has the birthright and the dignity to live in peace, to live their lives in worship as they see fit, especially here, but to model for the rest of the world the way it can be. So I too will echo the Lieutenant Governor. I'm sorry it has to be under these circumstances, but many times out of tragedies like this comes a birth of new thinking, new ways of doing, new solidarity. And what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling is the hunger to get this right is as strong as it's ever been. And this is our call. This is our generation. Many of us wished, and I wish it for our children, that they would not have to witness what they're witnessing, but that just puts the responsibility on us. Let's pass along a world that's a little kinder. Let's pass on a world that's a little more unified. Let's pass on a world that has a little more hopefulness and friendliness to them. That is what they deserve, nothing less, especially in this state. So I ask you as you leave here tonight, think of the little ones, see someone there, reassure them. I'll go home and hug mine and know that they're watching, they're scared in a chaotic world. We have the power to change all that. We have the power to unify. We have the power to make this better. And we certainly have the power in this state to say there is no room for fear and there's no room for hate. Not in Minnesota. Thank you.
Well, you can stay standing. I'm going to ask all rabbis and cantors who are in the sanctuary, if you're in the other rooms, to go up to the screens, to come forward so that we can together sing Oseh Shalom as the conclusion of our evening tonight. Perfect. Thank you.
Oseh Shalom bimroma, Yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imro. Shalom, Vibram.
Blessed are you who have come here in solidarity, in unity, in a moment of incredible connection. And blessed are you as you return home and take these words to heart and walk the walk in the world that we want to give to our children and our children's children. Thank you. Amen.